All right, all right. I would love to know how Module 2 went for you. Post in our group if you're in the Facebook group, how it went. If you're not in the Facebook group yet and you do have one, be sure you check out the link to join that in Module 0 of your course in your client portal. So, yeah, I would love to know, how did it go trying to honor your hunger? Was it hard for you to really break past the patterns that you had of ignoring the hunger? And how did you get through those obstacles? So, this module is all about fullness. We've talked about hunger in more detail than you probably ever thought you would, and now we're talking about fullness in good detail. Remember, these are the two main principles out of intuitive eating that we're focusing on, is how to honor our hunger and how to feel our fullness. So let's talk about, how do we know when to stop eating? So there is something so critical about truly being able to feel your fullness and honor it and be satisfied that I need you to understand. And that is that you need to trust that you will give yourself the foods you desire. You need to trust that. Let's talk about why that is. We will get a cleaner plate mentality if we don't think that we're going to be able to eat that food again. Because right now it's a cheap meal, or I'll be bad and I'll just have it this one time. If we say that to ourselves, we are setting ourselves up for this clean your plate mentality. You better believe that we're going to finish every last crumb on our plate, even if we were full like half a plate ago or 30 bites ago, right? So when we're dieting or restricting in any form, this really instills a license to eat at a mealtime when it's legal, right? When it's legal to eat, we are going to eat as much as we possibly can at that mealtime. If we only allow ourselves to eat at specific times, we have this sense of entitlement when those times finally come up. This is like a classic example of it is intermittent fasting. You better believe when somebody's fasting window is over and it's time for them to finally eat, that they have this license now where it's legal to eat and they are going to eat everything that they can. They don't care how full they are. They don't care what they're eating and how it makes them feel. It's just the fact that they can eat now, we're going to go crazy over it, right? That's how it goes. It's the same thing of like, think of somebody who's on a liquid diet and then they're allowed like one meal a day. Is that one meal a day going to be like a nice little salad with some chicken? No, it's going to be madness, right? When that real meal finally comes, we are not worried about how hungry we are or how full we are. We're just ready to get every last crumb. So, this can also happen when real food is allowed often, though. It doesn't necessarily happen if we're on a liquid diet or we're fasting. It can happen if we're allowed food all the time, but we're only allowing ourselves specific portions. Okay? So it's not limited to just like food being in front of you or not. It's also limited to you psychologically thinking, I can only have so much. Okay? Again, like that triggers this I want what I can't have mentality where you're going to rebel and eat more than you had decided you were supposed to. So if you are constantly underfed, you better believe that what is in front of your plate is going to be gone in like 60 seconds or less. It just is, because we're like so hungry and we're just ready to like, so we don't have the opportunity to feel our fullness. That's really the point I'm trying to make here. Do we need all of the food in those circumstances? Probably. However, it's not cultivating an awareness of when you were truly full. If we're just shoving food in because now it's time to eat, or we have this license to eat for whatever reason, we're not fostering that awareness of, how do I know that I'm full? And this can also happen if we only have access to foods that are deemed acceptable by diet culture. So if we only keep foods that are like fat-free candy around, or low-carb items, or lower calories, organic, gluten-free, whatever, that can give us this sense of like, oh, I can eat more now because it's guilt free, like Skinny Pop or whatever. I can have more of it because it has less of something. So we, again, don't care about how our body feels. It's just all about the fact that, like, I have this, again, license to eat more. So we're not fostering that awareness. So these are things that we need to look out for. Other contributing factors to the clean your plate mentality are well-intentioned parents, right? Teaching you to finish your plate. And I admit, as a parent, I'm tempted at times to be like, you know, you did so good when my daughter ate a lot, or why don't you eat more, or whatever, because it's just a concern of like, it's totally well intentioned. It's coming from a place of like, I want to make sure my daughter's fed and growing. And it's just this fear that I'm not doing good enough. It's really all about me. It has nothing to do with her. But I have to stop myself and remind myself, my toddler is an intuitive eater. I don't want to mess with that, right? So chances are you probably had parents do that to you. And so what you learned from a very young age is that you have to finish all your food and that you'll be praised if you do. And then also, it can just be this like, and we talked about module 1, like how we can be an unconscious eater, a waste not eater because of the food dollar. And so we can really have this huge value put on food. We're respecting the fact that like, okay, there was some economics that was put into this, some money that was put into this. I don't want to like waste it. And so that can make you want to finish your plate as well if you're just not willing to waste food, because you're like super respecting the value of it, right? But there's something I do want to say about that. Whether you're wasting the food in the garbage or whether you put the excess food, let me put it this way. If you know you're full and you have food left over, whether you put that leftover food in the trash or in your body, either way, it's waste. It's either being wasted in the economical sense or it's being wasted in your body, because now you're eating in excess what you needed for your body, and that's damaging to your health. And I mean, it's not as simple as like, oh, one bite too far and now I'm in the hazard zone. Like, this accumulates over time. One bad meal isn't gonna, or one meal with too much food is not going to ruin your health. But over time, the more we put that waste into our bodies, the more our body's going to break down. So either way, it's waste. So you choose, do you want to damage your body, or do you want to like maybe lose a couple quarters, right? Because in the end, if you consistently are overeating and putting that waste in your body, then you will have thousands of dollars in medical bills. So that's how I like to think of it. And then it's also, it ruins the experience of the meal too. Like, as an intuitive eater, you need to be, you need to value the eating experience and try to keep it as pleasurable as possible. And once you go beyond the point of comfortable fullness and you enter in that uncomfortable zone and even painful zone, it's no longer a pleasant experience, right? Finishing our plate can also be just a habit for whatever reason. There's not really a rhyme or reason. Maybe you're used to having the whole bag or the whole burger or the whole box. You're just used to like having things in its entirety. And that's just a habit for you. Or you are pretty likely to polish off your plate if you are starting a meal in that ravenous place. That's why I like you guys to eat when you're at a 3 or 4. That way you're not entering into a meal completely ravenous, because you're not going to be able to respect or feel your fullness accurately. This is a biology thing, right? We just aren't able to pay attention to satiety cues when we're starving. We just can't. We're wolfing our food down. There's no time. And then also, food insecurity is a real thing. It's a real problem in the world. And a person really does not know, if the person really does not know when their next meal is going to be, it makes sense that they're finishing all their food. Totally makes sense, right? So even if you are not used to cleaning your plate, you may be somebody who does not realize if they're full until they've reached this like really uncomfortable level of fullness. Like when I say the word comfortable fullness or the phrase comfortable fullness, you might have no idea what that feels like. You're just so used to being uncomfortably full. And that's not uncommon for me. It's not uncommon for me to talk to people who have never experienced comfortable fullness before. They're like, what is that? I don't know what that is. I'm either starving or I'm stuffed. There's no in between. I actually hear my husband say a lot of times when he's had like a lighter meal, he'll be like, wow, I feel good after that. I feel like I can do anything. Really, the reality is that he's just so used to overeating to the point of being uncomfortable. And I don't badger him about it. He's actually gotten a lot better. So when he would like notice that, it's because he's just so used to overeating till he's stuffed, right? But he has gotten a lot better about it. So that's like, think of my husband when you're trying to find that like comfortable fullness. Get to a place where you're like, wow, I feel really good. I feel like I can go do anything. That's what you're shooting for. That's the feeling that you're shooting for. And here's the key here about comfortable fullness. You will never find it. If you don't know what it feels like, you will never find it unless you are 100% giving yourself absolute and unconditional permission to eat. If you still have these little food rules about like, oh, I shouldn't eat that though, or I shouldn't have that much, there's no chance in hell you're going to leave food on your plate. Right? If you believe you won't be able to have that particular meal or food again, you're not going to leave it on your plate. You're just not. So without it being true for you that you can have whatever you want, then stopping when you're full will just become another rule to break. It's not going to be a choice made out of free will, right? If we're like, yeah, if we have these rules in place, we can only have this much, then you're going to just want to break the rule. We're rebellious human beings. So don't make it a rule in the first place. Make it a choice of free will. So trying to find that sweet spot between like comfortable fullness and uncomfortable fullness definitely can be tricky. And like I said, a lot of people have never experienced that before, or at least they don't know what it feels like. So I want you to try and think if you've ever felt that before. Have you ever felt just comfortably full? Like my husband said, you can go and do anything you want because you're comfortably full. Some ways that I can, it's hard to kind of describe, but some ways that it has been described before that I think is helpful is feeling like my stomach is content, feeling satisfied, pleasant completeness. Those are some things that you can kind of look for. If you're feeling that way, then you are probably comfortably full. So how to break the cycle of cleaning your plate. It can be hard, especially if it's a habit, but it is not impossible by any means, especially if we're hyper conscious, if we're really developing that sense of being aware and that interoceptive awareness. It's not impossible by any means to break this cycle. So there's some things that we can do here, just some really feasible things while you're working on your sense of awareness. I'm not saying to do this the rest of your life. I'm just saying these are little tricks and tips that can help you when you're trying to figure out what that comfortable fullness is like for you and when you're usually getting to that point in a meal. So the first one is just pausing in the middle of the meal or the snack and just taking a little time out. Do a little taste check. Is this good? Do I actually like this? Is this worth the taste buds? Is this worth my taste buds tasting it, or is it just there? Right? If it feels like you're eating cardboard, maybe try something else. Unless there is a sense of logic, right? There's nothing else available. Anything to eat is better than nothing to eat. So maybe that's the case for you. But if there are other options, don't just eat something because it's there if you don't like it. And then do a satiety check. Am I still hungry? Do I feel unsatisfied? If yes, I'm definitely going to need to keep eating. Is my hunger starting to go away? Am I starting to feel fullness? If yes, I probably need a few more bites. Or am I actually feeling that like completeness, that pleasant completeness in my stomach? If yes, then I'm probably done. So, I mean, this takes patience, right? It takes practice. It's not going to be perfect right off the bat, so don't get upset with yourself. But just be patient with this process. It's worth it. Remember, you're in for the long haul. This is the long game. And then when you finish eating, ask yourself, where is your fullness at now? Maybe you really do finish the plate because you decided you needed that much food in order to get to that feeling of fullness, but you still aren't full. Am I still hungry? Or do I just not have that comfortability of being satisfied? Then go get more food. Full permission. Go get more food. It's okay. The food police are not going to come after you. Or maybe you notice, I actually think that was too much. Even though maybe I took a pause in the middle of my meal and then finished it, I should have maybe stopped somewhere in the middle of even that. Right? Ask yourself if this feeling that you have after finishing your meal, is it pleasant? Is it unpleasant? Or is it neutral? We are shooting for it to feel pleasant. That's what we want. So as you're kind of going through this process of discovering your fullness level, you are going to help yourself in identifying like that last few bites threshold. You're going to get to this threshold where you're like, I think I'm almost done here. I'm going to have a couple more bites and then I'll be done. You're getting close to the end point, and you should have a good idea of like how many bites you have left in you when that fullness is pleasant, it's satisfactory, and you're not uncomfortable. And then don't feel obligated to leave food on your plate either. I mean, I kind of said this like just a minute ago, but it's okay to go get more food. It really is. You don't have to leave food on your plate. For a lot of us, that's our ingrained habit, is to clean our plate, lick it clean, because we had already pointed, or we had already input the points into our MyFitnessPal or whatever. And so it's like, gosh darn it, I'm going to have every last piece of this because I had budgeted for it, even if I'm overly full. But sometimes it's like you needed all of it. So go get more food. It's okay if you finish it or if you get more. This is important. We're working on identifying fullness, yes, but that does not mean that you're going to reach comfortable fullness before the plate is finished. Sometimes it's necessary to grab the seconds. Sometimes it's necessary to finish it. There's no commitment to leaving food on your plate. So if most of the time you find that you can recognize your fullness and you can respect it, it will seriously make a difference in how you feel physically and also just your peace of mind. So I'm really excited for you to practice this and start to experience consistently having comfortable fullness. So if you're struggling and you're finding this really hard, here are some things that you can do just on like a logistical standpoint. Try to eat without distractions. You can't really expect to tune into your body if your attention is like bouncing back and forth, right? So instead of watching TV or working or scrolling or reading while you're eating, try just simply sitting with your food, savoring every bite, and checking in with yourself regularly. I'm not saying you need to do that at every meal. You just might need to do it a few times as you're starting to learn. And then eventually you're going to get to this place where awareness is so easy and like automatic for you that you actually can identify comfortable fullness even while you're engaging in other things. This can depend on the person and the activity for sure, but at some point you'll be able to get to a place where you're able to easily multitask. And then reinforce your conscious decision to stop. Little acts like pushing your plate away while you check in with yourself, right? If you're checking in with yourself, but then you're still grabbing another bite, like that's not helping. So consciously be like, all right, I'm going to push my plate away for a few minutes, check in on myself. It doesn't even need to be a few minutes. It can literally be 60 seconds. And decide how you feel. Or you can also just put your utensils down. You can use your napkin. You can visit the restroom mid-meal, whatever you need to do to just give yourself a fair chance to really check in. And then the last thing is just defending yourself from that obligatory eating, especially when you're at somebody's house. It can feel like you're being so rude to not eat what they offer you. But I like to think of this as like, I'm actually being more rude if I'm lying to their face about how I want to eat this thing, but I don't because I'm full. So you can just say, no, thank you. Or, I'm so full right now, I actually don't think I'll be able to enjoy it. Maybe I'll have some in a little bit. They have it there for you to help you, or they want you to enjoy it, right? So be honest with them if you're not able to enjoy it in that moment because you're too full. So your homework for this module is really follow those steps to breaking the cycle of cleaning your plate and give yourself the chance to check in and identify if you're full or not and find that comfortable fullness level. I'm excited to hear how it goes. Be sure you share with our group and reach out if you're having any troubles.